Hey everybody, Adam Savage in my cave. No, Adam Savage in Fon Davis's cave, the famous Fonco down in Los Angeles. And we're going to talk Terminator today. Okay, we're going to talk Terminator 3. We both worked on Terminator 3. It was the very, Terminator 3 was the last job I did for ILM before moving on to MythBusters full time.
Wow.
And it was the first job on which I got a desk and became a supervisor. And you were like my right-hand shepherd and being a supervisor and effectively co-supervised the whole build with me. But like you taught me the ropes of being a supervisor at ILM.
Yeah, I got all that from Brian. Brian Grenade. He was our boss.
Brian's one of the best supervisors I ever worked for.
Yeah.
I never knew someone who could stress about a project and not pass that stress on to their crew.
Yeah.
Ever.
He had a term for that.
What was that?
He said that we as supervisors are shit umbrellas. We had to take it all and keep it off our crew.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned from him. It's extremely valuable, actually, especially with artists. Artists do not work well under duress.
Right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Brian would be going and getting yelled at by the producer every day.
Oh, yeah.
Every day.
Yep.
He has stories. Oh, my God. Okay. Yeah. So on Terminator episode 3, on Terminator 3, the big set that we built was a miniature particle accelerator
yes.
build. And what did we take, about 7 or 8 weeks to put this together, to put the final model together?
Oh, I wish I could remember. I don't remember. I remember it was fast.
Yeah.
For the amount of detail that it contained. And it had miniature lighting inside the particle accelerator.
Which was done by Grant Imahara.
Yeah.
So we actually designed, this is a particle accelerator, so it's a big tube, but it's faceted because there's all this detail parts to it, both inside and outside. So we're working with these pie slices that are tapered.
Yes.
And then we built into the castings that we sent to the mold room lighting ports so that Grant Imahara could route his interior lighting
yes.
through places.
Yeah.
Like that's the sort of really interesting engineering challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of like, who's gonna have to have a headache with this later?
Yes. Well, yeah, and the paint department and the electrical department was always the ones that got the short end of the stick if you didn't plan for it.
Totally. And actually on the painting department, we made that model incredibly modular.
Yes.
So that you could pull out all of the interior detailing.
Yeah.
And like the paint, one person's
had
working
sections that would cover the seams and it could all break apart. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about these beautiful things because they actually have a couple of lessons in them that I want to talk about. But what are these?
These are just fuel containers or liquid. Flammable liquid containers. Yeah. I just read that on there. Anyway, but these were foreground pieces for the miniature. This is actually a larger scale than what was in the miniature. I think the miniature was 12th scale. And
no. A human in the miniature was going to be 2 inches tall.
Okay, so that would be 48.
Give or take. Yeah, sure.
Anyway, but so we made these oversized containers so they could put them really close to camera and we wouldn't have to worry about them looking terrible. But on the set, there were the same exact pieces, but smaller, like the set scale.
Right. So in this interior, we had all of this piping, and these were part of the piping. And then you made these to be closer to camera in a sort of forced perspective. So we're looking at more of it.
Yeah.
When CG first started showing up in movies a lot, people were complaining that it didn't look as realistic. And they kept on thinking that was an artifact of the process of using CG. But I submit that a lot of the early CG looks bad because of the lack of institutional knowledge from the model makers making stuff in 3D back then. And when I look at this, I can see that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 6 laser cut parts, 2 pieces of plastruct, 2 more pieces of plastruct, 1 plastruct tube. Right?
That's correct.
This is all of 30 minutes to put together.
Yes.
But one thing I love that you did is these little slots. That's like the kind of thing that absolutely would be on the real thing that a model maker might not realize needs to go on there. That kind of little bit of storytelling, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've always designed, and I'm sure I've learned this from a lot of my mentors through the years, but what we do is visual storytelling. And something I learned just working in films is you never take any item for granted. Every item tells a story. And that story might be subtle and not something that steals the scene.
The focus.
In fact, often it isn't, but it does need to cement whatever storyline they're telling. You know, and this was an industrial facility, and it had to have all the nuance of an industrial facility. My favorite is actually the graphics, because we got that Alps decal printer.
Right.
It was a dye sublimation printer that could print in color, and the best thing about it is it could print in white.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how we were able to do these decals, because you could print the white first and then all your color on top.
And it would pop in the camera.
And those are water decals, water slide decals, just like the ones you get with a model kit, which before that printer, there was no way to make them. We used dry transfers.
Oh my God. I actually miss dry transfers.
I
Nobody
did too.
makes them anymore, but like I remember contracting like 4-color Pantone tight dry transfers for museum quality work.
Yeah. Yeah, we used them a lot. The protector in Galaxy Quest, that's all dry transfer.
Right.
That was the last project I could remember where we used dry transfers before we got the Alps printer.
For me, it was the shuttle on Space Cowboys.
Oh.
We dry transferred a serial number on every tile on that ship.
I remember that now.
Okay, so within this, you used a term that people might not be super familiar with. I think we said forced perspective. When something like this happens, when you take a larger object than is in the set and put it close to camera so it feels like you're looking at a wide expanse. Talk about this right now.
Yeah, these, I did not work on this scene, but I was fortunate enough to save these from being tossed when Kerner was sold off, I think.
Okay.
But these are for the Sea of Skulls in Terminator 3. It was an underwater scene. So there are actually 2 in-camera effects used in that scene.
Oh, wow.
One is dry for wet,
Yeah.
and one is forced perspective. Dry for wet, unbelievable. They did Hunt for Red October.
Yep.
All the underwater stuff in Phantom Menace they did with that.
There's this, as an aside, I just want to talk about this because I love this. Dry for wet is really specifically, you smoke up the room so that the smoke has the same inhibition on light's ability to move as water does. And if you get it close, holy hell, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
But it opens the question is, how do you know? And I remember getting onto the first location, on the first soundstage set at ILM with Marty, and he was smoking it up. And I was like, how do you make sure the smoke is right from frame to frame? Because you're doing stop-mo. And he said, this is lovely. They use a digital spot meter from the longest angle in the soundstage. And as long as you're getting the same value from the white card at the other end of the visual spot meter, you have the same amount of smoke density.
Yeah.
And I could not believe that that meant that when you're shooting stop-mo, even one day to the next, you don't get pops, but you don't. So sorry, that's my dry for wet.
Well, it's also because it's a haze.
Right.
Like you smoke up the stage and then you wait for it to settle to where it's just an even haze.
Yeah.
And they would add or subtract to get that spot meter to read the right number.
Okay, so forced
that was
perspective.
dry for wet, and then also forced perspective. So there were some of these on a table in the foreground, right up close to the camera, and then there's some space, and then another table with this size skull, and then a little bit of space, and then a table filled with these, and there were, as you know,
Lots and lots,
hundreds and probably thousands of these things.
They gave me one of these at the end of production as a crew gift. You got one of those?
I think everyone got one. In fact, I think that's how I got that one.
But so, yeah, so the effect is that when you do this, all of a sudden, this one looks way farther away from the camera than this one. And this is one of the old, literally, this is from the silent era, this trick.
Well, this is from even further back to on stage. They would use forced perspectives on stage quite a bit.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's a special effect that predates cameras.
And one of the things I also love about this is, it's like you only talk about it as part of film history after the fact. In the moment, your supervisor comes and goes, dude, we need 600 skulls of this size, 400 of this size, and 1,100 of this size. And then you're just going, and then you dress to camera, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the other part about doing this kind of perspective work with this is when you end up like sticking this on the end of a C-stand and just flying it until it fits the frame right?
Yeah, and it's a remarkable amount of it is eyeballed. You always imagine before you go into this line of work that there's formulas for everything. And I remember I used to talk to Pat Sweeney, and I've had a lot of these conversations.
Yeah.
He was one of the DPs at ILM, and I worked with him at Skellington on Nightmare and Peach. But I said one day, I was like, so when you do high-speed photography, how do you calculate how many frames per second you shoot for an explosion? Is it based on the scale versus, and he stopped me and he goes, well, Fon, there's a lot of formulas that people have posted on the internet. You'll see them around and stuff. And he goes, and all of them are wrong. He says what they ultimately do is they shoot tests.
Right.
And they pick whatever looks right. And sometimes if you use the formulas, it won't necessarily look right. So it had a lot to do with just intuition.
Marty and Bob were a cameraman DP combo we all worked with frequently. And there was this thing that would happen because the DP, the director of photography, is sculpting the shot frame by frame. And you're putting your pieces in forced perspective. But every now and then, Marty would turn to us and say, I need, in the top left of frame, I need a little thing that looks like some shit's hanging off of it. And Charlie Bailey would be like, you've got 90 minutes. Go and build something. And you'd go and run and slap some stuff together, throw some paint on it, come on back and hang it from a C-stand. And then your thing is like right in the frame. Sorry, I got really excited there for a second.
I was there. I was just there in the moment.
Those were some of the most fun moments. Running into the paint booth and like Lauren and everyone's like, what are you doing? You're like, I got 40 minutes. I got to paint this.
That's so funny. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but there's like the different stages of like when you're in art department, when you're doing maquettes and all that kind of stuff, things are kind of slower and changes are not bad.
No.
You want to explore all the options. So change everything. It's like you don't get married to anything because someone can come in and change it. And that's part of the process.
Yeah.
And then once you start shooting, no changes.
Right.
Oh my God, you can't change anything. Were you kidding? So there would be that lead up to shooting, and then shooting would always be the peak level of tension and anxiety and pressure. Because once you're on stage, you're paying for the stage and the entire crew.
Yeah.
On some shoots, you could burn $10,000 an hour.
Yeah.
More or less, but it's a lot. And so your time is more valuable on stage than it is in the shop, and then certainly in the art department.
There's this aspect of that high pressure decision-making process that I find like film, like every other career, film attracts a certain gene pool. And that gene pool tends to really like high pressure decision making where you have to alter your priorities constantly on the fly. And some of it's based on production, some of it's based on the fact that this is the director and that's the DP, and some of it might be based on the fact that it's Tuesday, but you better have all that straight in your head when you're making those calls because there's no time.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, no, it's exhilarating. Yeah. It definitely, there's an excitement level that grows with all that anxiety.
I like to say that time pressure tends to hack branches off your decision tree.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I think I might use that quote or something similar of yours in my lectures for students. It's such a valuable life lesson, I feel like.
Absolutely.
But I always use the analogy of a toothpick on set might be worth $10,000. Because if you don't forget that toothpick, you could spend $10,000 waiting for someone to go get that toothpick.
Right. It ends
and
up
so
in the
things
shot
in a stage don't have the same value as they do in the real world.
This is totally true. The last thing I want to point out about making models at ILM is that for much of the time we were at ILM, the sound stages were actually across the road from the model shop. And so the last stage of indignity for any model that we were making, and these models might take 11 people 5-6 months to make. This is like a $2 million model, and we'd be pushing it out into traffic in Marin, California to get it over to the sound stage.
With a sheet draped over it that you knew was just ripping pieces off as it kind of blew in the wind.
And like people are driving by and like holding cameras out the windows, "That's Star Wars!" and like screaming at you.
Yeah, it was like the gauntlet. Well, and then every single driveway and crack in the road and manhole cover and just torture. You could just hear the sounds of cracking plastic getting it to stage.
And you have just spent like weeks getting.
And you know whatever happens between that shop and that stage, you have to fix that day.
Right. Before anyone even looks at it. I think that's a great place to stop, Fon. Thank you so much for this walk down memory lane. We could keep doing this for hours, but I think we should stop. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Fon.
Thank you.